call the meeting to order of the Board of Leavenworth County Commissioners. I'd like to invite everyone to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to begin with a moment of silence, please. A roll call, start with Commissioner Stevens. Here. Commissioner Smith is present. Commissioner Culbertson.
Here.
Commissioner Schimke.
Commissioner Schimke's here.
Commissioner KAAZ.
Commissioner KAAZ.
All right. All commissioners are present, 2 by phone. So let's get to public comment, and we'll go to administrative business. Mr. LOUGHRA, you have any administrative business this time?
Yes. One of the commissioners had asked me just to provide an update on the industrial park in Tonganoxie, and I did get some information from the industrial park in Leavenworth as well. It's my understanding that both parks are, for the most part, complete. The industrial park in Leavenworth, I think the final cost was approximately $9.2 million. As you may recall, the county provided approximately $5 million, $4.8 million of funding towards that park. Obviously, at $9.2 million, all those funds were expended, and then the city also contributed the remaining amount. For Tonganoxie, the county provided $5 million up front for that park. The park is, again, substantially complete, and it's my understanding there's approximately $1.7 million left in fund projects that would be county funds. We have been in discussion with the city administrator for Tonganoxie. According to the agreement, I believe they would need to return those funds unless some other agreement can be entered into allowing them to retain them. So that would be the update, and I do think that they intend to ask for a work session when it's allowable to discuss those funds.
I did get a call from the mayor of Tonganoxie yesterday, and that is correct. They're going to ask for a work session with us to discuss potential project that they have in mind.
Or there's our County Road 30 money.
Well, it's all to be discussed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mark, this is Commissioner Schimke. I know that we had had a conversation on this topic not terribly long ago. Again, while there is a business operating there in the Tonganoxie Industrial Park, the septic that I think many thought, or the sewer that I believe many thought was there is not. So they have been operating via septic because of that expense in getting the sewer line ran. So I think there was some confusion, at least on a few people's part on that, and I was able to confirm that. So.
Okay. Now, were these taxable bonds or non-taxable bonds?
Those particular proceeds, I believe, were non-taxable, and we have verified with our bond counsel that getting the funds back would require some reporting, but would not, she does not believe, impact the taxable nature of the bonds, or non-taxable nature of the bonds.
Okay. And then the bonds were sold for economic development, correct?
The bonds, well, they are bonds, I'd have to go back and look at the specific language on those. The bonds that are part of our sales tax typically can be used for economic development or or road projects. But
Mr. Van Paries?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, good morning. David Van Paries. I would like to call the Commission's attention to 3 facts that I think need to weigh into your discussion on this topic. The first is that the resolution that authorized the creation of the sales tax and the resulting fund limits the amount of economic development expenditures to 20%. So there is a cap to the amount of money that can be spent for economic development. The remainder of the portion of those sales tax proceeds is committed to road improvement projects. So that's the first fact I'd like to call to your attention. Second fact is that under IRS regulations, which I do not believe have changed, the county is obligated to encumber or expend approximately 85% of the bond proceeds within a period of approximately 36 months. So we need to keep that expenditure cap in mind as well. It is somewhat flexible, but it is a cap on the amount of time that you can hold bond proceeds for any purpose. So that's a second factor that I think needs to be taken into consideration. The third factor is that the agreement between the county and the city of Tonganoxie specified that the funds would be used for specific purposes. They were not given under the auspices of general economic development. They were given for specific purposes, specific jobs to be performed at the Tonganoxie Industrial Park, similar to the agreement made with the city of Leavenworth, but different in other aspects. So those three factors need to be taken into account at the time you bring this matter further for further discussion.
Were these bonds sold in 16, though? December of 16, or was this the other?
This is the subsequent bond issue, Commissioner.
Well, I know we sold some in December of 2016, right before I came on board.
I think the 3-year period that you're referencing is up on these bonds. There's also another thing that you have to take into consideration. I think that the county councilor mentioned the 85% rule. There's also a 5-year kind of rule where all the fund proceeds are spent. So I think we're probably going to be pushing up against that by the end of this year and should take that into consideration.
Okay.
I know you have a lot of work sessions that are probably backed up, but when do you anticipate we could maybe get a work session to discuss this?
I think one of the challenges, obviously, is the capacity of the room and how you handle interactive discussions when we're still in a limited capacity. Even if next week, if we open back up in a limited capacity of the public, I still think this room would probably handle if their commission wanted to come in. But being interactive in nature might be a challenge. But I think it's easily schedulable. We could even look at something where it's more of a conference call nature. But realistically, if they could provide us an ask, we don't even know if they could provide a written proposal saying this is what they wanted to use the funds for. I think that would help us schedule a work session so that at least we know in advance what topics to be prepared for.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'll communicate that to the mayor.
I have communicated that to their city administrator as well a couple of times.
Okay.
I have a question about public comment. I have, I think, 14 different letters here that are regarding, of course, what the topic is for tomorrow. My question is, with so much public concern about the county's response to this, is it potential that we could open up tomorrow and make an exception to our policy and allow public comment?
No.
Are your letters because someone started a rumor that said we were going to close till May 30th?
No, I don't. I don't know. I'm getting letters from a lot of business people, a lot of. I personally think that there's no reason, if we're going to be opening up the county, why can't we set a parameter where we allow people to come in and give their public comment on this? I'm probably getting more letters on this than even any other thing that since I've been up here.
Still in place.
And I think it's important that the public be allowed to weigh in on this.
But I think one of the things that we asked is that they provide it in writing. I received one. I think the board received one overall request. I'm not familiar with the other requests that you may have received individually. But if they provided it in writing, I would think if we circulate that to the rest of the board, that allows for their public comment right there.
I think we could maintain social distancing.
I want you to
and
also take
have
into
public-
consideration that the governor's stay-at-home order is still in place as well. Not only is the courthouse closed, but the governor's stay-at-home order is still in place through.
I think governance of our county is an essential business. And I think citizen input is essential, and I don't think that would go violate any kind of stay-at-home order. I think we should allow the public, with maintaining social distancing, call us, get on the list. We'll make sure this room doesn't have too many people, but we'll have people come in and give their comment, or via telephone.
And that's fine after the governor lifts the order.
Which we'll know by
Well,
next week.
And we'll know by next week.
Well,
we should know by Thursday afternoon.
Yeah.
Then in that case, we should make no decision prior to the governor releasing her order. Certainly, tomorrow should be just a discussion, and then we'd come back and make a decision following her issuing her order. But I think it's important that the public be allowed to weigh in on this, as far as us hearing from them.
Well, the emails and phone calls I got was because someone started a rumor that said we were going to stay closed till May 30th. Lockdown, I believe the term.
Well, that's, I mean, there's different, I'm getting comments from a lot of different people, but I'm getting comments from people asking that we don't go beyond what the governor's order is. And then there is a lot of confusion, and that there was never, I don't know anywhere that anybody said lockdown. So just get that out there. There's no lockdown proposed.
Or talk of going to May 30th,
No.
the end of May. So I guess we find out who starts that rumor, we can find out who started the rumor about closing council on aging.
But as far as us making exception to our policy and allowing public comment, I think this is an important enough issue that we should allow public comment.
And go against the governor's order?
That I don't believe it violates the governor's order. Essential business, conducting the governance of this county is essential. And the people have the right to weigh in on this.
And they can by email or...
That's not the same as having public comment.
Okay. Commissioners have any thoughts on Commissioner Stevens' request?
My thought is that I consider that, well, first of all, I'm not certain, but based on statute, that, we can come to a consensus that we agree with or disagree with the plan that will be proposed, and the county health officer is the individual who opens up or continues, all those types of things. So what we're doing tomorrow, I would view more as a work session, and we traditionally don't have public comment for work sessions. So I don't see that it would be in our best interest to defy the governor's order that discusses, even in public buildings, the state capitol is closed to the public. So I don't think that we need to push that at this point.
And that was Commissioner KAAZ.
That Commissioner KAAZ?
Sorry, yes, that was Commissioner KAAZ.
Okay. Well, I think tomorrow, I mean, it is on our agenda. I was hoping that we would vote to have something in place when the governor makes her announcement of that, whether they lift it on May 1st or May 3rd, and that we would clarify the opening date, whether it's midnight or what we plan to do, whether it be midnight, May 3rd, or when we do this. But it would help if we could have something in place and the board would approve tomorrow to limit the confusion on what these orders are.
It's going to be hard, though, with the governor not issuing her order till the afternoon.
Well, it's just a statement at the end if the governor lifts their order, but if or at the end of the governor's order.
But a lot of people are saying that if the governor's order is comprehensive enough, perhaps we would just track with the governor's order. And since we won't have seen the governor's order, maybe we should have a special meeting, maybe we should have a work session tomorrow, and I would suggest public comment, but you guys can decide. But have the work session and get this all ironed out, have all the information, and then have a meeting on Friday to finalize it after the governor has issued hers, and see if there's anything we need to tweak.
Hey, Mike, this is Commissioner Schimke, and I think, while I get your point, I think one of the challenges we have here is that, the governor is making a decision for 105 counties, and I think, over 90% of those counties don't have a statistically significant volume of cases, so I don't think she's of the opinion. And definitely for the phone call I attended with Commissioner Smith last night with the greater Kansas City area governing body, that they probably want to be much more rigorous in their policies than the governor likely would be. Because again, she's having to make a decision for 105 counties, not the individual counties, and I think that's how you want to manage it. You want to manage it locally. So, I think our job and goal, specific to, again, every plan we've all had a chance to hear and or review to date, albeit in draft form, that we have a discussion and figure out the most rational and resident-friendly approach that is latent with common sense. I can't say that enough. Takes the feedback we have received. As you mentioned, how many letters you have. I know we've all received lots of letters and phone calls. But ultimately make a decision based on all the facts that we have, including that's shared by our health department, versus I'm much more concerned about the actual facts and statistics. And again, I do want all of those comments. I want as many letters and phone calls as people want to provide. But I think we're obviously operating like all of our peers and probably much more engaged and much more frequency than a lot of those other municipalities that we've mentioned. So I think I feel really good about having that meeting tomorrow, and based on what's shared from our health department, and ultimately, regardless of the decision that the governor makes, that we can have a position that's specific to May 4th, right? If the orders, if they do allow them to conclude on May 3rd, because again, we can't predict what the governor's going to do. I think we can make a very educated decision based on everything I previously mentioned, without having to figure out how to recreate the wheel based on the position we're in and the guidelines that are in place.
Well, I just think we would want to see the governor's order before we make a final determination on that, and she's not going to release it till tomorrow afternoon. I'm more than happy to meet on Friday to finalize it, but it seems a little premature to jump in ahead of the governor.
Well,
This is Commissioner KAAZ. I listened in on the governor's conference call on Friday afternoon, and she indicated that her intent is to provide her plan, but that she was going to leave it up to the individual counties to develop plans that were more tailored to their specific needs.
okay.
Well, this is Commissioner Schimke. Maybe it's more of a question for the counselor. But again, any plan that we would put in place at the county, if the governor has something that is more restrictive, regardless of protocol or industry or otherwise, it supersedes any decision that we would make, right? So I think to your point, Mike, I don't feel real confident that whatever is released by the governor is going to always have Leavenworth's best interest at heart. That's just me. And again, I think she's being tasked with a decision that encompasses millions and millions and millions of people versus what we're focused here locally. So.
And I think I agree with that basically, but I just would like to, before I sign off on our approach, I would certainly like to see what she has in mind before we make it finalized. And we could have our work session, like Vicky called it, a work session tomorrow. And there are ways, once again back to the public hearing, there are ways we could have public comments via telephone. It wouldn't even, and hear from folks on this, and if we're going to, and then come back Friday and finalize our order after seeing what the governor actually lays down.
I guess last thing I'd have, and Commissioner Schimke again for the group, is I don't think any plan is going to be perfect. I don't care if it's the governors, I don't care if it's the feds, I don't care if it's Wyandotte County or Johnson or the Core 4. This should be something that's very fluid, right? Because every week we're going to get new information. And if there is a better policy that we can implement, or if based on the numbers, more restrictions that we'll have to implement, it's something that's likely going to be a every week activity. At least that's my assumption for the foreseeable future. So again, regardless of what might be presented next Thursday or tomorrow afternoon, it won't be perfect, and it's likely only going to be for some period of time. So our job should be, and I don't have a problem meeting Thursday and Friday, just our jobs are going to be, every week we're going to assess the information, we're going to listen to our experts, and we're going to make decisions based on what's best for our community.
Mm-hmm.
This is Commissioner I concur with Commissioner Schimke.
Well, I would like to get something passed as soon as possible to get it out to the public, because when the governor, if the governor lifts on May 3rd, we need to have ours in place, ready to go, and the public needs to know what to expect. They need to know where they can open up their business on Monday morning. They need to know how many people can be in their business on Monday morning. I just think the sooner the better that we get this information out there.
I think that the meeting tomorrow is scheduled, so we intend to hold the meeting. We've already put out notice of it. I think the real question is how or if public comment would be allowed tomorrow. I think that's the question that needs to be resolved, because the meeting tomorrow in the morning, we need to go ahead and have that because we've already noticed it. Tomorrow, during that meeting, we will discuss the plan. Whether we implement the plan tomorrow or not is something that can be hashed out tomorrow. Today, really, I think the question that Commissioner Stieben had was if we were going to allow public comment, and if so, how. And that would be one that it would be good to try to resolve now, and that so that tomorrow morning we would be prepared for that.
And we just do it on our, while we're locked down or we're closed down to the public, it'd just be the first 15 minutes of the meeting of an agenda item.
Well, our policy, the way it is during lockdown, is they have to provide it in writing. There is no public comment
Right.
outline. For public hearings, there's phone calls, but for public comment by policy that was adopted by this board, they provide it in writing. So
If we make an exception to our policy.
that's why it's here, that's why it's up now. Is there any interest in making
I've
an
heard
exception to
from-
that policy?
I've heard from who
I guess
my
I'll just
area.
make a motion that we make an exception to our policy to allow public comment via telephone, and logistics of that set up by the county administrator for tomorrow's special meeting. That's a motion.
I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Motion
Before
by,
I would consider a second, that on the motion, even if it were allowed by phone, people to phone in and express their opinion, we would still comply with the 15 minutes?
is that part of your motion? 15
I'll
minutes?
modify my motion to make that part of the motion.
3 minutes per person and 15 minutes total?
Right.
Did you hear that, Commissioner KAAZ?
Yes, I heard that. I'll go ahead and second so there can be a vote.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on Commissioner Stevens' motion? And voting?
Aye.
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 Commissioner Schimke votes aye.
Commissioner Cox votes aye.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess we just need to know if people need to call in to let you know, or how do you want to handle that, Mark?
Yeah, similar to how we handle public hearing, they would need to notify us that they wanted to be part of the meeting and provide us with contact number, so when the time comes, we can call them and allow them their 3 minutes. We would need that probably by the end of today for that to be any reasonable expectation of accomplishing it. So, and it would be a first come, first serve. So they can.
That's correct, and I think that it needs to be made clear to anyone if they call in that they may not have that opportunity, because once the time is up, it is up, and that it would be best if they submit their comment in writing, and that can be read.
Okay.
Okay.
Would
They can either
we
call
still
our,
like to have it emailed in advance?
right. They could either call our primary number and get put on a list, or they can email and we can put them on a list. Either way works, and they can use the BOCC email. And if they have comments in writing, I would recommend they submit that via the BOCC email so that all board members receive it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else on administrative business?
Nope.
I just had one on the transfer station, the date changing to dump for free. There was some confusion on some people. They had dumped after the first of the year, thought they were on the April to April, and went back for the other April to April, and it's been changed to January to January. So are we getting a lot of people that are you hearing from a lot of people that's happened to, or is this just a few, or?
As far as I know, that's the only one.
Okay.
And I'm assuming it's the same one. If there's more than one, there maybe were two, but I believe the one that you're referencing is the same one that I'm aware of, and it was just a one-time. They dumped in January, and they wanted to come back in April and dump again, but we did change our policy that the calendar year instead of a rolling. In the past, what was happening is the people would come in, and then they had 12 months to wait, so we had every month it was renewing for some people, so we went to that calendar year so that it's consistent and it's easy to track administratively.
Okay.
So,
But was the website updated in
the website was
manner?
I did check on that. The website was updated within 3 days of our meeting where the board voted to change that policy. So I think what happened here is the individual looked at the website in January when they came in, and they didn't look again, because why would you necessarily in April when they came back?
And thought they were due, they could dump again in April.
But it was a one-off, and it just happens. Sometimes you get caught in that in-between.
Okay. Well, they asked if they could have a waiver on that, because they did get caught in the crossfire. And I said I'd bring it up at the meeting. So it's in your area, Commissioner Stevens. So have you had contact with that person?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I'll pass you the information. Okay. Anything else before we move on to the consent agenda? Has everybody had a chance to look at the consent agenda? And anything need to be pulled out, voted on separately, or? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Chairman, this is Commissioner SCHIMKE. I did have a couple of questions just for staff, more so just for my education. There was a restitution line item on page 3. I don't know that I've seen very many of those, and or was probably apprised of what that constitutes.
Okay. That would be something probably the county council or senior county counselor could answer.
I don't know if it's damage to property or what exactly.
Commissioner SCHIMKE, this is David Van Paris. As part of the mechanism for providing attorneys for indigent defendants in a district court, the county has also reached an agreement with district court whereby the county can recover from time to time restitution payments, and that would be that element. I haven't examined it in specific. I will and give you a more detailed report. But I anticipate that's the source of that line item.
Okay, thank you. And then the other one I had was I saw there was a payment on page 5 to Rural Water District 12, and I assume this is Eisenhower specific, just not exactly sure why there would be a payment due on behalf of the county, so I just
That's
was curious.
Mr. Culbertson's bridge.
Commissioner Schimke, David Van Paris again, I hate to interrupt. That payment is with respect to the E58 replacement project. It's the relocation of a section of their water line that needed to be moved.
Oh, sorry, I mixed them up. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Cobb votes aye.
Commissioner Schimke votes aye.
Okay, all right. Thank you. We ready for Megan?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning,
Megan
Megan. I
Waters.
forgot, sorry about your grandfather.
Well, he's in a much better place now, so he
Okay.
did pass away last Thursday. So we
Okay.
just had services awkwardly
Yeah.
on Monday. So.
All right.
So I have many items on the agenda today, so I'm going to go ahead and start with my quarterly report. The quarterly report is for the first quarterly report, which is January, February, and March. This is for community corrections. Up until the 20th of March, we were functioning office as normal. We were still doing our every Tuesdays. We had juvenile court. We had court Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on adult court. We were still doing our monthly urinalysis testing, field visits, visits with the juvenile correction centers. We did have our intern complete his internship through Washburn during this time frame. I actually celebrated 12 years with the county in February. I have another staff member that just celebrated 6 years with the county last week. We have been working from home since the 20th of March. We did start rotating staff to come in because I have 5 staff, 1 day a week. So each staff member has their own day in the office just to make sure that they're able to get the paperwork printed out or mailed or anything that they would need to do from their office. I am working with my staff as well as the Sheriff's Department on looking at a phasing back plan on how we're going to look at what we're going to do as far as supervising clients back into the office once we kind of get some approvals from governors and everything else as well. So we're working on that plan as well. Under the Department of Corrections, we have submitted all the second quarterly reports, and we actually just also this week submitted the third quarterly reports. Those were due on April 30th, so tomorrow. We also have had some audits in our office, and then again, everybody's kind of working on the COVID-19 procedures. We just received an email yesterday, and we had an emergency Zoom conference call that the governor has the executive order to start releasing juvenile offenders from the correctional facility earlier than their estimated term. And so the first judicial district, which is again Leavenworth and Atchison, has 3 on their list that are looking at being early released from the correctional facility.
Are those all nonviolent offenders?
No, they are all offenders.
So not just nonviolent
Not
offenders?
just nonviolent.
So we're releasing some that are violent offenders?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now, as of yesterday, there were 4 female offenders in the youth correctional facility that takes up a 70-bed facility. And so they're kind of looking at trying to how to reduce that responsibility of KJCC, which also then reduces the staff and the interaction through all of their supervision there. So I think the governor's plan was to try to phase in the female offenders and then try to look at some of those other male offenders to try to start reducing and then spreading out some of the population over the whole Topeka facility. So
Megan, this is Commissioner Schimke. While I think there were some good questions by the commission there as to those specific inmates that would be released, but my question is this. Do they have a testing policy in place? As I'm sure you know, correctional facilities in general have been part of the cluster of positive results of COVID-19. I think specific to Leavenworth County, the Lansing Correctional Facility makes up over half of our, between inmates and staff. So my bigger concern is, while I think it's important to know the crimes that were committed of those that might be released, but how do we ensure that those that we're releasing aren't carriers or currently positive of the virus? Has that been talked about at all?
It has been. Currently, most of these offenders have been incarcerated for at least 6 months at the correctional facility. Currently, to date, we were notified yesterday that there has actually been no positive tests at the juvenile correctional facility among staff or inmates. So at this point in time, they don't have any positive tests there that I've been made aware of, but as of yesterday, they did not. This is kind of all like we're supposed to find out more information hopefully by the end of this week on if the governor, I guess, signs off on this. This was kind of one of the plans that she had kind of had, and we're kind of all trying to plan as far as within our jurisdiction, because with that being said, individuals that do come out of the youth correctional facility return back to their homes traditionally, and so we are trying to prepare parents, have resources available for those offenders that are returned back into our community as well. We are looking at possibly having some house arrest or electronic monitoring for some of the offenders based on their crime to at least ensure some form of restrictions the best that we can, but that's something that we talked about at a jurisdictional level, not necessarily a state level. If that answers your question.
That'll work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So like I said, this is still very preliminary. They have not told the juvenile offenders not to get hopes up, but as another plan that we are processing within our office, this is one of the other ones that we were just notified of yesterday as well. So any more questions on that? It's still so up in the air. I do know, like I said, we have 2 juvenile offenders that are both violent offenders are being released from custody.
Has this happened? This hasn't happened yet, though.
This has not, no.
Okay. What is the actual timeline on this happening?
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
They were supposed to, we had a meeting at 2 o'clock yesterday. They were supposed to have a follow-up meeting with the powers that be, and I've not heard of a follow-up. It's on my list of things to do today to follow up.
And what kind of a prison term did they have? Was it a long prison term?
For one of them, she was due to be released in 2021. She'd been in there probably about 2 years. And then the other one is actually due to be released on May 16th anyway, so they're just kind of expediting it.
That would make more sense than I hope the governor will not release a whole bunch of violent offenders. I don't think the people support that.
I do know part of our plan is to work with the victim services, both at the state level and the county level, to ensure that victims of these crimes also are made aware and protection plans are put into place for those individuals as well. So, as far as under the budget, this was pulled from our budget on April 20th. With the adult budget, we're sitting at about 24% remaining. Again, our fiscal year is July to June, so which would make sense. We would be in the final quarter of our fiscal year. With our behavioral health, we're still sitting at about 77% remaining. We do have some outstanding invoices to pay for substance abuse assessments that we have authorized to pay for our offenders before COVID-19. So we're kind of a little bit behind on getting the invoices and then getting the payments to those providers. So that number is down because I know I signed a bunch of purchase orders this morning. With the juvenile budget, again, it is split between Atchison. So the first couple numbers, those are all Leavenworth numbers. We're sitting at still $58,009.33 for the probation supervision, and then case management, which is, again, part of that whole release from prison population that we would also monitor and supervise. We're still looking at $97,695.85. For the Atchison population, they're at $99,728.48 for the regular monitoring and supervision of offenders, and they're looking at $32,357.80 for case management. Again, Atchison has a little bit different ledger balance system than Leavenworth does, so our numbers are not always meeting up as far as when we submit the spreadsheets to the state, and then again, as now we have everybody kind of having a little bit less working in the office to find those glitches. We have not received all of the expenses or the income from Atchison to be able to put into the workbook. So although those were what we had in our system on the 20th of this month, it is probably reduced due to the fact that we haven't received all of those expenses or the income from Atchison. For intake and assessment, which again is for the entire judicial district, we're sitting at $7,425.63. For project change, we still have a balance of $73,000. A lot of that is because we are still looking at hiring a counselor that would facilitate and monitor all the supervision for that. They are having a hard time looking for the right qualifications that meet the program through the Guidance Center. But we are working with the Guidance Center on that. To break it down a little bit more for the Leavenworth caseloads, again, with the adult population, we're looking at about 294 clients that we're actively supervising. Through this COVID-19, we have found that we've had a lot of clients that have been absconded, have come out of the woodwork, and have started reporting over phone. So although those numbers were from the 17th, we have, I think, 8 absconders that are actually now active clients because they've started calling and reporting in. So we accepted 40 cases over the course of the last quarter, and that is, again, also with us not having any court since the 19th of March. So that still is a pretty high number as well. For the juvenile population, we are responsible for 36 cases. Again, we do have a large population that is in the youth correctional facility or some level of incarceration, but again, as we kind of talked about, some of those are going to start to be released. And then you kind of see the agenda that we've been following through. We've had our lunch and learns. We've had a lot of trainings. Staff have been doing a lot of trainings through webinars while they've been working from home as well. So we've received a lot of good training information. We've also had a lot of, again, Zoom meetings. The Kansas Department of Corrections does a meeting every Wednesday, so we are able to see kind of what some other jurisdictions and what other agencies are doing across the state, both on the adult and juvenile populations. And then again, there's our list of goals. Again, we're still, as we have a little bit more time, being able to sit down and really review some of our policy and procedures. Still working on data collection. We're still working on making sure that we are looking at other grant opportunities such as drug courts. We were in the process of applying for a drug court grant until COVID-19, and so all the parties said that it was just a little bit too much work to try to get everything finalized by the time the deadlines were all met. So we are going to continue on that process for the possibility for next year. Again, we are still working on our COVID plan to phase back into supervision of offenders and then working again within the office. We've updated our continuing operations plan, and we've still had all, like I said, Zoom meetings and trainings over the course of this time frame. So like I said, although times are much different than they have been, we are still working full service. We have all of our clients that are calling us, and we're doing our appointments over the phone. Any major services that are needed, they are worked through the treatment providers who are also doing telecommunications to get services to clients as well. So So I'm anxious to see how things kind of transition back into the office come that opening day. But I think that we've been able to really still serve clients the way that we needed to, as well as still protect the population the way that we best could. So, any questions?
Seen any increases with all the kids out of school, problems?
Yes and no. We have seen an increase in domestic violence cases across the county. That's mostly more on the adult population side.
Okay.
On the juvenile population side, they have seen more runaways. However, as far as actual crimes committed, that's not been reported yet. For our offenders, we were dealing with a population of children that weren't going to school as much anyway, so
Right.
this is kind of just now everybody's on the same boat. It's not just
Right.
the ones.
So I didn't know, yeah, if it was reaching out into the other areas.
Right.
So, no? Any other questions of Megan? All right. Move on to your next one now.
So, as I've kind of said before, this is grant writing season. Our grants are all due May 1st. Before the board are 4 different grants, so I'll take each one up individually. First, we'll start with the juvenile comp plan. Again, this comp plan is for the 1st Judicial District. So this encompasses both Leavenworth and Atchison. Part of this grant, we have what's called graduated sanction, which is a large majority of our funding for our agency. That's where our juvenile intake and assessment, our JISP, which is juvenile intensive supervision, as well as our case management, all comes out of this portion of the grant. It's about $582,000. Also part of that, those numbers are prevention dollars, which we had 3 programs applied to provide prevention services to youth offenders and youth within their jurisdictions. One was in Atchison, one was out of Leavenworth, and one is out of Lansing, to provide services to prevent juveniles to come into the court systems. And that is for a little less than $40,000. As well as this year, the Kansas Department of Corrections offered what's called a JCAB grant. What that grant is that it's for communities that have significant needs, and then how they can utilize dollars under some of their reinvestment grants at the state level. And we were allotted $145,000 for that grant. So what we are hoping to do here in the 1st Judicial District is look at trying to set up a day reporting center where we can have juvenile offenders that have been referred either by the courts or by schools to come into the agencies and be able to have some kind of the supervision over them rather than them just sitting at home and not having any form of supervision. While they're under our reporting, we would work on credit recoveries as well as implement life skills classes such as simple money management, maybe some sewing, basic home food preparation, just some services and classes that they would be able to utilize as they mature and grow in their own lives, to be able to hopefully maybe reduce their continued stay within the correctional system. So that is what the juvenile comp plan is.
Okay. Commissioners have any questions of Megan on this grant?
If that goes through, Megan, do you have space to do that?
We don't
Facility?
currently at this time. Atchison has a conference room, or it's actually a large classroom that they would be able to use, and then Leavenworth would be looking at just using their own training room until we could potentially find space.
Is this one of the things we were talking about, off-site? Could be an off-site?
Yes, in a perfect world, we would hope that it would be off-site, just to really have the opportunity for those youths that are not involved in the system, not be engaged with those that are involved in the system, so really try to divide that line. Part of the state processing for the JCAB grant is that if more funds are needed, we can request more funds. So although the $145,000 we did not allot for rent or utilities of an additional space, we can propose to the state to ask for more money for those. So if a location is found, then we would be able to utilize that with more of those dollars.
I see.
Any other questions of Megan on this grant? I'll entertain a motion to authorize the chairman to sign it. So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Commissioner KAAZ votes aye.
Commissioner Shimke votes aye.
Thank you. Next one?
Okay. So in addition to the prevention dollars that we have under the juvenile grant, we also have what's under our reinvestment grant, which is called Project Change. We collaborate with the Guidance Center, and we offer services as a direct line service from court to treatment and services for our juvenile offenders. This is a renewal grant. We've actually been receiving this grant for the last 3 fiscal years. I'm glad that this is the first year we've actually got data collected out of it, because in the past we've not received data because it was just so new. But this year we were able to receive data out of it, and we have completed 52 offenders from that program, and we still have roughly about 22 offenders still involved in that program. So we're seeing good things happening through this program with the Guidance Center. So this is, again, a renewal for that grant, and it is for $116,470.
Commissioners have any questions? I'll entertain a motion to authorize the chairman to sign the grant application.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Commissioner KAAZ votes aye.
Commissioner Shimke votes aye.
Thank you.
Alrighty, we'll move on to the adult comprehensive plan. Again, the allotted amount was $234,000. This covers all the operations for our adult population side. With that, the biggest goals this year are going to be a lot of staff development. A part of that changed, obviously, due to COVID-19, but through the whole process of delivering services to offenders and also trying to keep the community safe, we feel that that's going to be our main focus this year, is really trying to make sure that we are offering and referring the correct services the way that we need to in order to, again, reduce the population. 294 cases is a lot to be able to manage for 2 officers, and so we're really trying to look at how we can get creative through those processes. So again, that's for $234,000.
Commissioners have any questions of Megan on any of these, on this grant? Then I'll entertain a motion to authorize the chairman to sign.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Commissioner KAAZ votes aye.
Commissioner Shimke votes aye.
Thank you.
And then our final grant is the behavioral health grant. Again, about 5 years ago, the federal government offered the state of Kansas $3 million to offer behavioral health services to offenders. They found that a lot of offenders on the adult population were unable to pay for treatment or pay for medication. And so the services under the behavioral health are to really try to offer services or offer payments for services to offenders to be able to remain into those treatments and in those services. This year, I'm asking for $70,000 under that We do not have an allotted amount for that, so that is me requesting $70,000. The hopes for that would be, we are looking at trying to get an actual, we call them program providers, to facilitate MRT, which is, again, that moral recognition therapy training.
It's a good program.
It is a wonderful program, and we've seen some great successes out of it for the offenders that have participated. Our problem is that right now the persons facilitating it are our probation officers. And again, with the large population that we're having to supervise, it's very difficult to facilitate a group and then also still manage and maintain your caseload every day. And so we're looking at hiring just a full-time person to facilitate groups, and then be able to do the proper documentation and reporting out of what that program looks like. We have proposed it in two different ways. One of those would be just as a Leavenworth County staff member, but we've also looked at collaborating with Atchison and having them possibly help serve the Atchison adult population if we aren't able to receive the full dollars amount, so that we can kind of still be able to get the services offered to offenders, but then still have it be that the probation officers can focus on what their job is.
Okay. Any questions?
Nope.
Then I'll entertain a motion.
Mike's on a roll. Make a motion, we authorize chairman to sign the comprehensive plan competitive grant application.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Then voting?
Aye.
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 Commissioner KAAZ votes aye.
Commissioner Shimke votes aye.
Thank you.
That's all I have today, Commissioners. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Megan, and I'll get these signed so you can get these out of here.
Thanks, Megan. Take care.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you very much, guys.
I noticed you're using the Financial Peace University curriculum. That's pretty good. That's, a lot of people don't learn to do a checkbook and that kind of thing.
Well, and that
It's
was
really
one of the things that we've kind of, in my simple questioning of the juvenile offenders, was that if mom gives you $20, how do you know what to do with it? Do you just use it all? And so that was kind of one of the areas where I was like, we don't have home economics as much in schools anymore. And so being able to allow juvenile offenders or all young individuals the opportunity to, I guess, learn the life skills that some of us may have had in years past, instead of just sitting at home and not really doing anything.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Video games. So I know through this COVID-19, my children have learned to iron, my children have learned to sew, and we bake bread every week. So.
Uh-oh. Better exercise, too.
Yeah, the gym's closed.
I love homemade bread.
We walked sheep for the first time last night. That was interesting.
Thank you very much.
I just about got it.
I just realized Doug was left-handed.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
You didn't?
Nope.
And if I missed something,
I will let you know.
all right, thank you, Megan. All right, we are ready for Mr. Weber. Sorry to keep you waiting.
And Commissioners, while Mr. Weber's coming forward, as we're going through the quarterly reports now, Megan's is a little different, obviously, because her budget runs with the state's budget. But this is the first opportunity, really. Bob's just, I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunate, he gets to be the first one up here for his quarterly report as we're getting ready to kick off the budget cycle. So one of the things that I've asked the department heads to be prepared for when they come in is to maybe for the board to talk about if there's any specific goals or projects you want the departments to focus on as they're preparing their budgets, that this is the opportunity for kind of that discussion as well. So Bob's here to give his quarterly report, but also if the board has anything they would like to discuss with Bob about being prepared as he goes through his budget, that would be this opportunity.
it's not necessarily for Mr. Weber to ask for his enhancement today. It's for us to,
If you had something
if we had
specific,
something we want the appraiser's office to,
absolutely, to focus on this year or when they're doing their budget, this would be the opportunity to kind of communicate that back to him.
okay, all right. All right, we're ready, Mr. Weber.
All right. We're wrapping up informal hearings from Senate change of value notices March 1st. We had 393 informal appeals. We've only got a handful left to do. And we have a few more to get the decisions in on. But, that number was way down from last year. And part of that is the valuation. I put the total valuation increase out there on the side to kind of show the correlation between number of hearings and what the valuation increase did. But I think part of that was people just, we didn't, at the beginning of the process, we were still open. But then we ended up having to call everybody and schedule phone hearings only. And so we went through and we did that. But I think that probably kept some people from appealing that might have appealed. We do have to certify values, but they do have an opportunity to appeal through a payment on a protest when they pay their first half or second half of taxes next fall, next December. And we don't like doing those as much because budgets are already set. And so any reduction affects something. But the law allows them, and they're open there, and they can start that process. And it's pretty much the same process. It's just that you have to pay that first half before you can file that protest, or you have to file at the same time. So that shows some of those numbers. Personal property, the statutory deadline for mailing personal property valuation notices is May 1st. I did ask for an extension on that this year. We're going to go over just a few days. This is only for a few of them. We have, because our practice is, as we work our addition and we get it completed, we send out that change of value notice at that time. So most of them, the vast majority of them all been sent out, but we may go over a few days and into next week and before we get the final ones out. The Director of Property Valuation approved that. He's approving all extension requests. So we've never requested an extension before. But we did for that this year. But that is one deadline we're right up against usually every year, trying to get them out the door. Maintenance reinspection. We're doing maintenance a little different this year. This is with the blessing from Property Valuation Division. Counties are doing different things. We didn't feel it was right to go up to people's doors during this time. So right now we're just focusing on urban properties, and we're reviewing properties, just reviewing the data, the condition of the property, walking down the streets. If there's an alley, we'll walk down behind it, but we're not entering the properties. We feel if we got to enter onto the properties, we need to knock on the door and tell somebody what we're doing.
Right.
And we have held off on the real properties at this point. We're going to hope later on. Some counties are just doing them from area photos, but the only thing you can tell, since we don't have oblique photography, about the only thing you can tell from the aerial photos if an outline of a building has changed, or if you see another building there that you don't have, but you can't really see the condition of the property, those sorts of things.
And what percentage do you got to inspect every year?
17%. We go. The law requires once every 6 years we visit a property.
Okay.
We section off. We start from the southern part of the county. We just work our ways north, and we try to balance number of urban, number of rural properties, because it takes longer to do rural properties. So we keep the workload as even as possible from year to year.
Okay.
So that's kind of how we had to submit that in a plan. We have a scope of work plan we have to submit to the Director of Property Evaluation Division every year, and we had to submit that change as part of our plan for our 2021 value.
But if someone appeals and one of your staff goes out and inspects the property, does that, you check that off, correct? As
It can be, yes, but because it's once every 6 years, if we checked it last year in an appeal, but it's in our area to do this year, we'll still do it again, because otherwise you end up skipping all over the county, and that just doesn't work. So.
Okay.
The building permits, the number of building permits is 183. It's just been fluctuating. It's not a great change. First part of the year it fluctuates quite a bit. And the number of sales, the January and February were really strong. We had 366. March, compared to March last year, was down a little bit. We get stuff up from the Register of Deeds, and so we don't have a lot of April, only part of April's up yet from the Register of Deeds. So I don't know about April's, but I imagine the number of sales will be off just because of the logistics of the thing. The market was real strong up until everything shut down, but then going forward, I don't know what will happen necessarily. And then the last thing I just put in there, we just got this. This will go as part of our substantive sales ratio report done by the Property Evaluation Division of the Department of Revenue. This is how they score us as far as are we valuing property at market value. The two major areas that they're looking at on this report is residential and commercial properties, and they're looking at both the median ratio and the COD. The median ratio by law has to be between 90 and 110%, and the coefficient of dispersion less than 20. So on residential, we're 95.8, and the COD is 8.7. That's about where we normally are. They have a lower limit on that coefficient of dispersion. It just measures your dispersion. Yes, we're at 95.8% of what properties are selling for, but how consistent are you at that? Are you all over the board or not? The lower end they set at 5% just because there's differences in buyers and sellers in the market. And they don't say you really can't get closer than that with less than that, because what any two people will give settle on a selling price will vary. And so we're within on those. As you go down, you can see vacant lots. We're at 92%. Now at the farm home, that's going to be a farm and home. That's going to be a home with land that has agricultural use. So agricultural use, we don't value at market value according to state law, and we get those values delivered to us by the Director of Property Evaluation. So that number is going to be less. You're not going to be valuing those properties at market value, because the whole property is not valued at market value. And then you can see the ratio of agricultural land at 3.3% of what the selling price.
Yeah. When somebody appeals and they bring in comparables they got from a realtor that's in the same school district, about the same size house, does your staff consider them?
Yeah, we try to put them in as best as we can.
Yeah.
Sometimes people bring in homes they think are comparable, but they're quite a bit different in size. we'll make adjustments. So, and sometimes it doesn't lead you to a lower value than what you already have necessarily. Once you put them in and they make adjustments, that we'll look at, because when you compare two properties, you're looking at the sale price, but not two properties are the same. There may be some different square foot, different garages, different outbuildings. So we do put everything we can in. Now, so like for 2020 values, we can only consider sales that happen up until, because our appraisal date is January 1st, we can only consider sales up to January 1st.
I see.
We can't,
Okay.
put in April sales, or if they do a payment on protest, we can't put in August sales. Everybody's got to be judged by the same standard. And that's, that's the standard.
But if you're going to appeal, you do need to try to get some comparables to come in with, correct?
Well, yeah, some people, a lot of people just, they have, pictures of their house, or, maybe property damage that we didn't know about, haven't recognized, and we will look at comparable sales. But again, they don't always, sometimes they bring them in, and we'll put them in and make adjustments, but they'll leave it, they'll suggest even a higher value. If you're bringing in a house that's 20 years older than you, there's going to be an adjustment made for age of the house. So, and sometimes they do, and then we end up lowering them because they brought in, and they need to be, we pull comparables, and we need to make the judgment that those comparables that are leading us to a lower value are better comparable.
Okay.
They're not.
So you just don't use comparable sales, you do the age of the home also?
Well, it's comparable sales, but you make adjustments for it.
Make adjustments for the age of the home?
So the age will make a difference. The square footage make difference. Whether it has a double car or triple car garage, or a basement garage versus an attached garage.
Okay.
Whether it had, a finished basement, not finished basement, all those things will make a difference.
Okay.
So,
when people are appealing, what are some of the things that they can bring in to use to demonstrate the condition of their property, and what type of conditions affect your decision on valuations? And like, for instance, does a roof affect it as much as like a bad foundation?
Well, yeah, right. So a roof, not as much, because people replace roofs. We don't raise them when they replace roof generally, unless we had it down because the roof is so bad. After the roof gets to a place that's so bad, it is definitely going to be, we will, but, if you're just saying, well, I've got 20 years on a 30-year life, we're not going to probably make a difference for that. But if it's, bad foundation, certainly. If it's the roof, the siding, the windows, all together, then we'll probably lower the physical condition of that property and see, and make an adjustment because of that. They can bring in pictures. They can invite us, under normal condition, they can invite us out. We'll go, some people have us go through the properties, come in and see. Things like cracks in the basement foundation are always nicer to see up in person, because, my house is 16, 17 years old. It's got some cracks. I mean, just about every house has some cracks. Are they an issue, or are they not an issue? Is it pose a structural issue or not? There's a difference between a hairline crack and a crack that's gaping about that big.
Does it help if they bring a contractor's bid on?
Those are nice. Again, some people go out and get a contractor's bid, to remodel their house when we're not valuing it as remodeled in the first place. Does that make sense?
Right.
But
if it was a foundation
for the age, and they go out and say, well, it's going to cost me, all this money to put in new cabinets, granite countertops, but we're not appraising it as if it has all that in the first place. So you've got to see what the contractor. But if you have have bad foundation, you bring in contractor's bid for what it takes to fix that. Certainly that would help.
Now, there's,
Bob, this is Commissioner Schimke. A couple of things real quick. You and I had a conversation, it's probably been weeks ago now, heck, it could be months, some of it runs together, but, the reality is we had some discussion around the obviously valuations, which we get a lot of feedback on, and I think most would agree or are forecasting that valuations are going to look, very different in the second half of the year. Now, again, that's just the state of the economy and sales and things that would follow unemployment and everything else. I think for educating, residents, it's important to realize, and you already said in today's meeting, that, those valuations, it's as of January 1. So likely, any relief or reduction is likely to be a, 2022 impact, right, rather than a 2021. Not to mention we've got second half payments that are due, I believe, next month, and here we are in a position where you've got homeowners that can't make their home payments, and I realize there's some relief there, and you've got lots of businesses that can't pay their landlords. I don't know what necessarily the relief is there, but just any as far as timelines and expectations, and again, I know you don't have a crystal ball, nor do we, but based on what's being, forecasted, when or where some of that relief as far as valuations would likely hit?
So we get multiple tax years. We're always dealing with multiple tax years. Right now, the second half of property taxes are due on the 2019 year. That's as of January 2019. What we just got done sending change of value notices are 2020, and that's as of January 1st, 2020. And you are correct that those won't reflect any changes that in the market that may happen. But January 1st, 2021, we're tasked to send change of value notices by the 1st of March of 2021 to reflect what the values are as of January 1st, 2021. And it'll be very difficult this year, but any changes that may happen in the market, we have to reflect those in our value for next year's valuation. So it'll be a struggle with just these few months to figure out what exactly is happening in the market. So anything, our focus is always on what is the value, what is the market value at this point in time. As far as property tax relief, that has to be done separately from the valuation process.
Right. My thinking was, again, even though I realize commercial is such a low percentage of our overall valuation, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I do like to educate, or at least share what I've learned when I can, that we are the only county out of 105 where the majority of our valuation, in this case over 70%, is residential.
There's a lot of counties where it's the majority, but we're the highest percentage as residential value, yes.
So we're the highest, but there are others where the residential far outweighs the...
Right, correct. There's quite a bit of them.
Well, I was thinking on the commercial side, when you have, entities that, could go 2-3 months, without rents or income, and you do a valuation approach based on income, and all of a sudden income's down 20 or 30%, and there's lots of conversations around all the different, funding sources out there, which is still TBD. That definitely changes that valuation figure, but again, it's more about educating people as to the timing of that and how delayed that likely is.
Right. Right, but yeah, it won't be for 2020 values, but the values for 2021 should reflect, what's going on in the market at that time, and so and then those taxes don't come due until December 2021. So
right.
It'll
Okay,
be
thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions, Mr. Weber?
I did have one question as far as classification of agricultural land. Sometimes if you have cattle or if you have brome, hay, you can your land can be classified agricultural, but if you have horses, it's not allowed? What are the categories that are allowed on that to classify it as agricultural use?
So, yeah, it's kind of a case-by-case basis on some of these issues, because, I mean, the statute says it includes these animals, but doesn't.
Do the horses have names?
They can.
So,
Some of them talk.
That's the
what,
difference.
how, and what has been interpreted generally by the Board of Tax Appeals as we've gone up is, generally cows, yes. I mean, what other uses are for cattle? Now, some people may have one horse. That's, is that an agricultural product? We've said no. If you just have a horse or two, for your own personal use, you're not producing an agricultural product. Now, we've had one or two places where they actually raise and breed horses that we have considered agricultural. And so we get somebody that has, we have a few chickens. Well, what do? We lay eggs for our purposes and consume them. We kind of treat that, try to treat that as, well, if you have a garden, that you use for your own, that's not really an agriculture. That's more of a residential endeavor. And we haven't been giving them agriculture use. But if the person's raising, has a whole bunch of chickens and they're raising eggs and taking them, to some place to sell, then that could qualify as agricultural use. So
Truck farm.
when you get down to these little, it gets, and then they can, if they don't like our interpretation, they can always take it and appeal it to the next level and see what they have to say about it. But it's,
I was just kind of wondering.
Marginal cases, it's always a case-by-case basis.
So it's not standardized across the state. It's according to each appraiser makes their judgment.
Well, it's the same law we're all trying to follow as best as we can. But like I said, even when you go up, the decisions aren't always consistent.
Those lawyers always put all those weasel words in there.
Yeah. There's no...
Those lawyers.
Yeah.
Better be careful.
There's no acreage minimum specified in the law or anything like that. So it's really, you got to look at a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Do you have any questions in budget or...
I'm not sure what we would recommend to enhance your budget.
I
think we're going to try to keep your budget low. So
I'm not anticipating any big changes in my budget.
okay. All right. Well, like I said, if we think of something, I'm sure we'll come up with it.
All right.
Anyway, well, thanks a lot, Mr. Weber.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Now we're ready for Mr. Knoll. How are you today, Bill?
I'm doing pretty good.
That's good.
If you guys have a hard time hearing me on the phone, just let me know. I'll try to project through the mask.
Project your voice.
Yes, project it so they can hear me. So for today's discussion, we have a capital improvement plan that shows funding sources and projects allocated out for several years. Previously, we did not have a set capital improvement plan schedule that was provided at the time that I started here with Leavenworth County. Feel free to go through this at any level of detail that you guys would like to. As you can see, we've tried to break it down by, we have the township local service funds, we have the capital improvement funds, we have a sales tax fund. I think it's the intention of our county clerk that this be adopted according to state statute, and then after which time we can allocate a special road and bridge capital improvement prior to the adoption of a formal capital improvement fund, according to state statute, that fund cannot. So that would be the Fund 215 currently, that is in our first column.
Did you look at the 09 and the 2012 capital improvement one?
We did, but not extensively. There were some projects on there that weren't completed, and I don't know the history of how everything has come to current status. For the most part, all of the projects that are listed on this capital improvement fund are ones that are currently in design.
Okay.
There are a few projects, like the 158th Street project, that we did put in here under 2022, but that is a 30% cost. And so,
Okay.
which should be contingent upon the acquisition of a grant to help support the cost of that project.
County Road 30 was on the 2009 capital improvement plan. I'm looking at an old one I had here in my notebook.
Yeah,
We've been talking about County Road 30 for a long time.
I think we talked about a few of these bridges for a while also.
Yeah. Yeah, you kick them down the road long enough and it's halfway through the life expectancy of the new one, I guess. I'm just doing some comparing to the old ones. I probably ought to throw this away. It's history.
Obviously, under the sales tax fund, there are assumptions made. So we were budgeting for a 15% reduction of revenue from this year. Obviously, we don't know what that reduction level will be. And so that, the sales tax revenue figures are subject to the economy. And so those figures are subject to change and will be updated on a as appropriate basis.
I actually got an 05 CIP plan sitting here.
Wow.
It's a while ago, but a lot of it's checked off though.
Sales tax is going to be bad this year.
Commissioner Culbertson, so that the folks at home can hear, maybe you had asked that, are we anticipating the sales tax collections to be, say, lower this year? Yes, we think that with what's going on with the COVID virus, that obvious retail sales are down. Some of our bigger retail sales collectors are the auto dealers, and my understanding is that their sales are running well under half, probably closer to like 20% of what they normally are. So we think we're going to have a couple months where it's significantly down, but we'll monitor that month to month and update this as we go. We did receive the March allocation of sales tax, and it's kind of what we anticipated. It's pretty comparable to the previous year because those sales were already in place before this went in.
There are a few other assumptions that had to be made throughout the creation of this budgetary document. The capital improvement revenues, the $500,000 is currently unfunded as a line item within the budget. It's kind of loosely based on the historical allocation of funds that are remaining from different line items within the operating budget. The road and bridge, $380,000 revenue balance is based upon current allocation of funds within the budget. That comes from land acquisitions, consulting fees, and utility relocations. The $100,000 that's in the local service fund is currently in that as an allocated budgetary line item, and so that is contingent upon the continuation of those funds. Obviously, those could increase or decrease through future budget cycles. The building permits are just an assumption, an equal representation. Obviously, we know that all townships aren't going to have an equal representation, so as those numbers come in, those amounts can be updated through the townships for our road impact fee assessments.
Okay.
Commissioners, obviously the capital improvement plan is a work in progress all the time. We evaluate it annually, if not more frequently. Things come up. An E58 can come up at any given time, which then forces us to reshift and reprioritize. But without having something that shows long-term where we're going, we end up in these maybe spur-of-the-moment decisions. And this is kind of the goal of the CIP is to get away from the spur-of-the-moment decisions and have knowing 3 years out or 4 years out what we're really planning on doing. And obviously, as commissions can change, priorities may change, but this at least gives us something from a staff standpoint to prepare for. The other thing, especially with the sales tax, that I wanted to point out is, and I think that Mr. Null did a really good job on this, when we start talking about a Group 8, or we start talking about a County Road 30, we've committed a lot of the funds from that sales tax already, either through bond payments, that money we've given for industrial parks, or the dust abatement projects that we've already done, or the big projects that we've already done or committed to, like Eisenhower, McIntyre, and 147th. So the sales tax specifically, it shows where we are able to then start anticipating more projects being done. And I think if you look through that, you'll see, and Bill, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 2025, or am I off a year before we get back to a point where we start having excess revenue compared to projects and debt allocations. And is that the right year, Bill?
Yes, 2025 would be the first year that we have a significant fund availability.
So when we were talking earlier this year about Group 8, without issuing additional debt, which then ties our funds up pretty much completely, 2025 is when we could look at starting to fund another group of dust abatement projects. That doesn't take into consideration if you do pull a County Road 30 in there, or Gateway project expenditures in there. Those, not counting that. So that's why the CIP is really important, that when we talk about a County Road 8, or a Group 8, I shouldn't say County Road 8, a Group 8, we know where we can allocate that, but then that also means these other projects we don't have a funding source for. So we're trying to identify funding with the projects.
So if federal funds became available for some infrastructure improvements or capital improvements, how would those be plugged into this plan? How do you foresee that?
It would make funds available. So if you were to receive a grant, say for a bridge project, we've allocated all of the bridge projects under either local funds, township funds, or capital improvement funds. And so it would provide those funds, like say if we had an off-system bridge grant through KAAZ, whatever those funds that on that particular grant, it's an 80-20 match. And so 80% of the funds that we currently have allocated would then become available for some other project, and then we would shift the CIP at that time. The same as if, say, a project comes in under budget, you can also shift projects up and then reallocate your funds. But this creates a document that we can work off of in order to identify funds available, say for projects that may come up in discussion. It also gives you a timeline of if you were to adjust some of these in a way that it made one project a priority over other projects. It identifies kind of how much those projects cost and how those could be changed in the timetable as utility relocations and engineering design allows. This plan does include the incurrence of additional bonds to finish the Eisenhower project, $3 million of which is shown in revenue from the end of 2020 going into 2021, an additional $2 million in 2022 from the end of 2021 as 2022 revenue. So it does include the addition of an additional $5 million.
Now, when we talked about County Road 30, I haven't studied this document, I just got it this morning, but if we were wanting to get that shovel ready or in a position where it's ready to go, if we did get funds, what would we need to do to get into that position?
We need to have the design complete, which it's nearly complete. And then we can start to acquire right-of-way if we want to. That could be a future work session topic. There are different techniques for land acquisition that we can implement if we need to expedite the process on some of these projects in order to move them forward a little more quickly. But we're going to continue, no matter where these are, we need to wrap up the design of some of these projects. We have a lot of projects that are out for design. We need to have them shovel ready and sitting on the shelf waiting for funding.
And utilities relocated.
And utilities relocated. So start that process now, whether it's a 2025, 2026 project. Obviously, if there's temporary construction easements, you don't want to acquire those 7 years in advance because you don't want to be acquiring a perpetual temporary easement. But at the same time, 48 months out, 60 months out from a project, you could start to acquire some of those easements and move forward with your utility relocation and finalize the design so you don't have later design changes. Once that plan is on the shelf, we really don't want to go back, and that's how you end up with the utility conflict, is to then allow for some sort of reassessment of the plans that requires design changes.
So if there's a federal stimulus that involves infrastructure, we'll be in a position where we could plug into those funds.
Oh yeah, we're going to take projects. If there was a stimulus package that came out, we will apply for any funds that we qualify for. We do have projects that we currently are in enough of a design scope to have completion that it would allow for that. We also have MARC funding we can apply for that is possibly available. We have the cost share program with KDOT we'll be using these projects to apply for. We have off-system and local system bridge grants that KDOT offers that will use these design projects. Different design projects, the cost share program does not cover the engineering costs, it just covers the construction costs, a portion of those. So different grants work in different ways. There's some that do cover some of the engineering and inspection costs.
But right-of-way acquisition is all one county.
Generally, usually it doesn't matter what grant you get. If
Right.
you get a grant. But if we got grants, or if projects come in under budget, or sales tax collection is up or down. I know last year, I believe, may correct me, but I believe we collected $3.9 million approximately. We budgeted a steady $3.5 million as a part of this plan, with a reduction this year due to the coronavirus. But obviously, we don't know what the economy is going to do in 2024. So this can evolve. You always want to have some available funds where you're not in the red.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, this is Commissioner Schimke. Quick question, just to circle back on some of these either right-of-way easement or utility easements. So, generally speaking, I realize this isn't always the case, but right-of-way is being inquired to usually improve road conditions, right? So as a property owner, you would hope that you're going to get a better product than what you have today, or from a utility perspective, maybe better services than what you have today. In any case, if you're, again, whether you're running new utilities or upgrading utilities or I guess just relocation of utilities, it's so hard for me to get my arms around how all of the cost, headache, and burden falls on the county and the utility companies that makes, they're generating revenue from being able to service all of these residents. Am I the only one that just can't figure this out?
Well, there's two different things that you need to look at with utilities. If the utility is located within our current right-of-way, the right-of-way that has been established prior to their placement. So we have senior rights over any existing utility right that might be within our easement, or it's just co-located within our right-of-way. It is then the utility company's responsibility to relocate that. If it's a water line or an electric line that is located on private property but within a utility easement that they paid for and acquired at some point in the past, then it is the responsibility of the county. The coordination of these things is always dependent upon the person making the improvement. And so you will identify any conflicts with your project as part of design, and then the cost allocation of the future relocation of that would be dependent upon whether they had private easement outside of our current right-of-way, unless you have some objection to that statement, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Knowles' statements are very cogent, understandable, and correct.
And so, to your point, I don't know if that was, you were alluding to the acquisition of the additional right-of-way cost or the utility relocation cost, but the utility relocations, like for the dust abatement projects, AT&T is responsible for those costs, which are hundreds of thousands of dollars. A water line relocation, water lines more often have their own private easements, and then therefore become an issue that the county needs to budget for within the construction of the project.
Yeah, I was just looking at just forecasted project expenses specific to utility relocations, property acquisition, $250,000, well, no, I guess $360,000 forecasted in 2021. It was just the 220,000 in 2021, 180,000 in 2022, 120,000 in 2023, and I'm just trying to go the burden of all of that effort and work associated with the improvement of infrastructure, the improvement or expansion of roads. It's just like it just feels like death by 1,000 cuts. But
yeah, and moving forward, we may try to expedite the land acquisition process by creating a county policy that allows us to base our land acquisition costs upon current county appraisals, and then after that acquisition has been attempted, move more quickly into court proceedings for condemnation. It's important to be able to complete these processes in a timely manner, especially when you're working through timelines on grants. You're only provided a certain window, generally not more than 7 months to complete the process. So you really need to send out your notifications with a deadline of acceptance, and then move towards condemnation if an agreement can't be reached.
Well, I think, and this is Commissioner Schimke again, I think, reviewing that policy and trying to have and improve upon it. I know there's been concern over many years of either atypical or irregular acquisitions and the slowing down of projects, and so it would seem that in some cases where if I have more resources or if I have a better lawyer the outcome in my position may look very different than, my adjacent neighbors who were trying to, work with us and do so at fair market value. And it's just been, I think, problematic, and there's been a lot of scrutiny on our inability to maybe move some of those along both equitably and as time effectively as possible. So I think it does need to be looked at, and anything we can do to improve upon that policy and try to find some consistency, I think, would be great.
Yeah, that policy's actually been one of the ones that I have gone through since starting here, and there is a new policy in draft form that's probably 90% complete. That with the development of this plan and some of the other projects that we were trying to immediately get out hasn't came in front of the board, but that is something prior to any new acquisitions taking place. I would like to bring back for a work session so we can discuss and create a timetable and an outline for staff to be able to utilize that clearly puts everyone on the same playing field, like you were discussing.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Any other questions of Mr. Knoll and CIP?
Commissioners, I know the question came up about grant funding. We have 4 projects right now that I would consider shovel-ready, and we have probably 3 more bridges that are pretty close. So if grant funding becomes available through the Reinvestment Act or something like that, we will jump all over that, take full advantage of anything that we can. And what happens then is it just allows us to move other projects up in the years as far as priority goes. If we're able to fund those projects with somebody else's money, like a grant, then it allows us to move up. And that's what's important about the CIP, is that you don't then go looking, well, hey, we've got this extra money, let's find another project. No, we've already got projects. Mm-hmm. They just move up in the queue so we can get to them a little quicker.
Okay.
And then it also provides a good timetable for any staff to work off of for these utility relocations. So, on, for instance, in 2024, we have the T-34 bridge. So by no later than 2023, you need to have all those utilities completely relocated and ready to go. And then you're also setting your bid timetable. So if you're wanting to construct T-34 in 2024, then in October of 2023, you may let that bid in for a spring start date, and giving the contractors 6-month window before they have to start the project, and providing you the best opportunity to get pricing while people are securing the next year's work.
Any other questions? Okay. I guess we're ready for private road discussion.
Well, Commissioners, several months ago, I don't even recall off the top of my head what month we started that discussion. We discussed private roads, and some of the things that the challenges that we came across at that time were minimum standards and how we deal with it. And we tasked our engineers with coming up with a set of minimum standards, and really what we came up with was that one, when you leave it to engineers, there's no such thing as a minimum set of standards. There's a AASHTO standards that are out there, and so the minimum set of standards are whatever that minimum standard is in the AASHTO standards, which really didn't get us to the private road. It gets us back to public road. After Mr. Knoll came on, that's one of the challenges that he and I were discussing, and he was actually familiar with the program that one of our neighboring counties utilizes that I believe is very much in tune with what the county commission was trying to accomplish. So I've asked him to kind of just go over that with you to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then if that sounds like what we were trying to accomplish, we will amend, and I think he's already started down that process, actually, and we'll amend that, but we also then have to amend our, not building codes, but our subdivision guidelines to allow for it. But Douglas County had a program in place. It seems very reasonable, and I think it accomplishes that, and then I'll let Mr. Knoll take it from there.
The program that Mr. LOUGHRA is referring to is available within the urban growth area of the city of Lawrence currently. The city of Lawrence and Douglas County have a joint planning department that they do share some employees between them. And so they were referred to there as a cluster development, but they're not a cluster development in the sense that where you have a land with a whole bunch of houses clustered. It's basically a short form plat or an administratively approved platting procedure that allows for some interior access easements. They refer to these easements as cross-access easements, not a private roadway. Private roadway has some assumptions of standards that are, as was discussed, possibly referring to AASHTO. And so they classify these as cross-access easements. And so through the platting process, if your property is zoned for a 2.5-acre lot currently, and you own, say, 17 acres, you could put in a cross-access easement that has a design set standard for a gravel roadway. It provides for different surface types. And so we would need to adopt a gravel road standard equivalent to what we expect maybe the number of lots or the road that is adjoining. So if it's adjoining a road that is considered a local road, it would have a local road gravel standard, or maybe it is 5 lots or less. They do allow for administrative approval. There is an appeal process that is available. All the landowners within 1,000 feet are still notified. If a percentage of those landowners file a petition, then it does go back in front of a formal platting process review, where it's no longer an administrative procedure. But the roadways, the difference between this and a subdivision plat from a surveying perspective or a land title perspective is that these require a meets and bounds legal description. The conveyance of the property isn't created by the filing of the survey. It does not create lots 1, 2, 3, lot 35 of a subdivision. It is creating a meets and bounds legal description that then has to be recorded on a separate deed or by a separate instrument. And so by doing so, it's much like all the rest of the properties in the county, where legally all of the properties that are in unplatted areas owned to the center line of the roadway or to the section line. Likewise, these properties own to the center of the cross-access easement. The cross-access easement is then used in lieu of road frontage, and it is allowed for as the access to these properties. But what it does is it allows an opportunity, if it is the intention of the board, for people to divide land that would otherwise be unusable. If you have a flag-shaped lot that was created at some point, or if you had land that where you only had a certain amount of road frontage, but you had a lot of land in the back of the property, it provides an opportunity to create lots within proper zoning guidelines, which a lot of areas in Leavenworth County would be 2.5 acres for that land to be developed and be used for residential purposes.
I think the other thing there that is key is, like Mr. Knoll said, was administrative approval, which, I know we've talked about trying to streamline some of our processes, and administrative approval with if there's no petition or protest petition, then it's approved at the staff level, and you eliminate that 45 days to the Planning Commission and then 30 days to the Board of County Commissioners, as long as it's within proper zoning. So I think that we accomplish two things. We allow the cross-access easements, and you allow that administrative approval. It really, I think, accomplishes two things that the Board of County Commissioners were directing staff to do.
Does this impact the existing private roads in any way if we adopt this?
It wouldn't impact anything that's existing. It would just be how we handle it going forward, and there wouldn't be private roads, obviously. It would be cross-access easement, and how they develop that there'd be some limitations, but much less restrictive than building a
So
county
we just
road.
continue to have the private roads we have right now, but this would be going forward what our process would be.
Anytime, correct me if I'm speaking errantly here, but anytime you create a new set of subdivision standards or new zoning standards, those that are pre-existing have vested rights, and so anything that's currently been approved would continue with the vested rights in the property. And so this would be just something that you would have a date that you would set after its adoption, and then moving forward, you would have the opportunity to look at it. And so one key difference, if you were to, and we can provide any examples. I've personally done a few of these surveys. I can provide examples of them. They look like subdivision plats, but they're not. One key difference between what the urban growth area of the city of Lawrence requires and what they do have some fairly stringent requirements where you have to do future development areas and set aside a certain percentage of the property as green space. That requirement obviously could be eliminated or reduced, but their current regulation requires a 40% set aside for green space. That's a fairly large percentage of property that's for future development. They consider it a future development area. They also have specifications regarding environmentally sensitive lands. Any cluster of trees larger than, I think it's 500 square foot, have to be identified and developed around. The removal of those trees for the construction of a home is not allowed. So there are things within their regulations that are
And that's even if it's on private property?
Yeah, so there are things within their regulations that I would not say would be supported from what I've been made aware of by the board here. But the general idea of what they have implemented there seems to be the direction that you guys have been interested in looking.
And on your previous private roads, at any time, they can petition the board to have the county take over their private roads if they're up to county standards. Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, yes, it's been more than one occasion in the past where what was formerly a private road was brought before you by the property owners at that time to be made a public road. It's been handled on a case-by-case basis. I would suggest as part of the consideration of the proposal given to you by Mr. Knoll that you consider adopting a formal policy that in the event a private road is proposed to be converted into a public road, that it be done through the creation of a benefit district so that the property owners directly benefited by that action bear the cost.
I agree. It doesn't need to something the taxpayers need to pay for.
And then the other thing that is a portion of the City of Lawrence's existing regulations is if these are within a urban growth area of a city, say adjoining a city, as a part of the prior to its administrative approval, the developer of the development is required to sign an agreement that allows for the property to be annexed in the future. There's an annexation agreement that
Okay.
may not be something that you're interested in. But these are all things that are within the existing regulation that they are utilizing that you may want to remove or amend prior to its adoption. But like I said, the general theme of the regulation is something that I think that
Well, it really doesn't matter. It's whatever the state statute requires for annexation, wouldn't it be?
I think what they're requiring is they sign a voluntary annexation agreement,
Oh,
so they
okay,
can't,
all
they
right.
can't protest or against
Okay.
annexation in the future.
All right, I see.
But, and I think that, I mean, if it was contiguous with a city, that's one thing.
But if it's an island annexation, that's another.
Yeah.
I don't believe this board would be supporting any more island annexations. I'm just speaking.
So,
Don't ever say never?
Never say never.
Okay.
so what we would do, again, I wanted to make sure that that sounds like the direction we were trying to get to for the board, and if that's the case, we will prepare a formal policy with our suggestions, and then we'll look through what needs to be amended in the zoning guidelines and subdivision guidelines and bring it back to the board as a work session. But it will be, I think we can get that on as a work session fairly quickly, actually. I think we've made some pretty good progress on this already.
Okay.
Is this something that should go in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission first, or?
Well, any change to the subdivision guidelines would have to go past them, but, we've discussed that, the private road thing with the Planning Commission twice. This board's discussed it several times, so I think that getting something that you all are comfortable with and ready to roll is the important step there, and then we will roll it out in the down to the Planning Commission on their changes that would need to be made.
Any other questions, Mr. Knoll or Mr. Lawfrey, on this? Well, thank you for all your work on this and research.
Thanks, Beth.
Yep, you guys are welcome. If you have any questions about any of it after you had a chance to review it, try to address those.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill. Have a great one.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Any other business before the board at this time? Then motion to adjourn.
Second.
Voting. Aye.
Mr. Pop, aye.
Commissioner Shimke votes aye.
All right.